Thanks so much to George and Emma, and I have been so inspired by all of the conversations today. I am also pleased to call up James Rudyk, who is a longtime friend of mine. We have been working together for almost a decade. James is a passionate, equity-focused leader who joined the Northwest Center as executive director in May 2012. James came to Chicago from Ohio. So James is a transplant, but a true Chicagoan, and has been an incredible partner to me and to Chicago Cares over the last I guess we've been working together for about 5 years in this capacity, while we've been certainly friends and partners for almost a decade. So welcome, James.
Thank you so much, Ellen, for having me. I'm excited to be in conversation with you today.
Oh, thanks for being here. So you know that I am both a proud and protective Chicagoan. Like Dr. Pollard, I was born and raised in Chicago. And there's often a single story, and I would say an incomplete narrative shared about our city. So as somebody who has been in the city for more than a decade now, and who definitely counts themselves as a Chicagoan too, what are some of the things that you wish were better appreciated about our city, whether that's the values that distinguish us or the work that we're doing around racial equity? What do you wish was better appreciated?
Yeah, thanks so much, Ellen, for that question. And yes, I do consider myself now a honorary Chicagoan, being here over a decade. And so I think the challenges that Chicago faces around segregation and institutional racism in housing and education are still really real. And I think one thing that I wish that folks appreciated about Chicago externally, and both even here inside of Chicago, is our diversity, right? And is the fact that the city does remain extremely diverse. And it's through that diversity being, 1/3 Latinx, 1/3 Black, 1/3 white, really brings a unique cultural, racial, and ethnic diversity that makes us even stronger as a city. And I think in our work in the civic sector and in civic society, that diversity, that range of experience that we see, the different perspectives for people from the South Side, the West Side, the North Side coming together is really important. And though Chicago remains segregated, there is so much work around racial equity happening. I know both with you and Chicago Cares, with my organization, Northwest Center, and throughout the city, we're seeing leaders come together to address those issues. And I think the narrative of segregation is still the narrative that's out there. And while it's still present, we really are working every day to try and change it.
Yeah, absolutely. Appreciate that. One of the commitments, obviously our work together around advancing racial equity is certainly a commitment that we share. But we also share a commitment to grassroots community leadership and developing leaders. And we do it a little bit differently because at the Northwest Center, you all develop leaders through organizing. We develop civic leaders through volunteerism and volunteer cultivation. But it is a mutual commitment that we've worked on a lot together. So I'd love to hear your perspective on what role grassroots community-based leadership will play in the future of American democracy.
Yeah, I feel like it's a conversation that we've had a lot over the years. I remember during COVID on your front porch having this conversation and talking about it. And so I really appreciate the question, particularly in the context of all of the other leaders across the country that we've heard from today, and thinking about leadership and what does leadership mean. And so you're right. I think the means to our ends may be different, but I think the ends of developing leadership is so important to the work that we do, And I do think it's the future of our work, because we're not going to be here forever, right? And it's our job, and I think our responsibility and duty, to transfer the leadership that we have, the knowledge and the information. And we're not always best suited. What I always say is I serve a predominantly Latinx community. We work a lot with parents and in schools, and I'm not a parent. I don't have a child in the school, so I'm not best positioned, to make decisions about education in a community where I myself don't have a child or a kid. And so for us, it's about developing that leadership from the individuals that are most directly impacted by the issues, so that they have a voice and that they're able to use that voice to determine the best solutions for their community. And I think when folks take ownership and when their leadership is built and they see that their voice and their power, right, their ability to act is able to make changes in their community, they're more civically involved, they're more likely to vote, they're more likely to donate, they're more likely to volunteer, they're more likely to give back. And seeing that engagement, seeing that involvement, it really is what's helping transform communities here in Chicago, and as we've heard, across the country.
Absolutely. This is a little bit of a curveball question, but given what you just said, I think, you and I have talked a lot about our obligation as leaders in the city and leaders in our organization to really cultivate the next generation of leaders. What do you think is the most important thing that we need to do aside from that transfer? Like, what do we have to stop doing? What might we have to give up? What do we have to do more of to actually make that leadership development a reality in our organizations?
Yeah, it's such an important question, Ellen, and one again that I feel like we've grappled with over the years. I think we have to have conversations like this, and in these conversations, hold space for this for funders, partners, elected officials. We're so busy doing the work, and I'm not sure that that leadership development, particularly the grassroots leadership development, the knowledge transfer, building up leaders within our organizations, within our communities, is valued in the same way that the programmatic work is that we're doing, the outcome work, the all the data that we're compiling for our funders. So I wonder if there's a way to change the narrative and re-put leadership development at the center of what we do, so that work can be funded and so that work can be included in our programmatic initiatives, so we actually have space and time to do it, right? I think we're doing this leadership development work on top of all of our work that we're doing. So it's hard to create space. It's hard to hold time for it, but it's so necessary. And I think we do it around the margins or the edges. And so I wonder, what if, 25% of your time was focused on leadership development? What if you had annual leadership development grants and leadership development goals specifically related to that, not kind of as one-offs on top of the work? And so I'd love to see that. I'd love to see all of those in the sector talking about leadership development in the same way. And so I think that starts with the language that we use, with the conversations that we have. And so I think this exact moment, this space is beginning to do that.
Yeah, I agree. Well, and two things that I know give me hope every day is this community that I have the privilege of being a part of that really is about leadership development, but also the bridging and weaving work that you and I do together, bringing Chicagoans together across their differences and building relationships in a really community-centered way. So as we think about the future, as we think about the midterm elections, as we think about some of the wins here in Chicago that we had out of the most recent elections, what gives you hope?
Yeah, I think what gives me hope is there are so many institutional, structural, and systemic barriers that are working against folks, and that are working against people participating, people being involved, people running for office, people sharing their dreams and hopes and aspirations. And to see the level of involvement that we're seeing from the grassroots level here in Chicago, whether that's Chicago teachers, whether that's former nonprofit executive directors, whether that's local elected officials running at a national level. I think seeing that moment of engagement and of empowerment and of advocacy, where people are stepping up into leadership, are the fruits of the labor, right? They are what we're talking about. And it takes time, it takes years. So we've been at this, like you said, a decade. And so to finally see some of that work start to come to fruition with aldermanic races, with state rep races, with congressional races, right? And seeing that we're having even more representative, more Latinx and Black folks, more LGBTQIA folks, more females and female identifying folks in office, to me feels like it's an opportunity for us as in leaders to really see the fruits of the work that we're doing.
Awesome. Well, thank you, James, so much, both for your partnership and for your friendship over the years. And with that, our time is up. And to wrap up our interviews, I'm going to turn it over to my friend and fellow Brittany Hughes, who's coming to us from the East Coast in DC.